Hello, my name is Lee Pro, and this will be part 1 of 2 of my on-camera feature matches at Star City Opens Nashville for Legacy.
Yeah, we have two of the more popular fair decks. We have Lee Prost playing Esper Blade, a deck that we kind of saw made popular in GPDC. Rudy Bza and Todd Anderson were both playing versions of it. Plays Deathrite Shaman, Stoneforge Mystic, Snapcaster Mage, and True Name Nemesis. So the whole goal is to basically just get a Stoneforge to play win with Batterskull or win with True Name Nemesis with the Jete on it.
Right. He'll be playing against Andrew Shrug, who's playing Death and Taxes. So Death and Taxes is one of those decks that it's kind of it's a prison style deck. I think it really rose to popularity in response to the rise of show and tell decks. Mm-hmm. It's got a great show and tell matchup. Esper definitely can be a little bit of it can be a trickier matchup for it.
Yeah, I think generally Esper Death and Taxes has difficulty with True Name Nemesis plus equipment. However, it does have ways to kind of contend with that. It has equipment of its own, so if it can put it on a flyer, it can kind of race it. It also has, Wasteland and Rashad Port. So if it can put pressure on Lee's mana, then he certainly has a lot of opportunity there to kind of take advantage of that. But let's see what Andrew does here. Lee leads with a dark creeping tar pit. Let's see if Andrew has a Mother of Runes or an Aether Vial here. Aether Vial obviously huge in this matchup. So yep,
and there we go.
Aether Vial. What really probably the most important card in the deck. Really makes the deck function. That along with Mother of Runes.
Yeah. So Lee will continue just to develop his mana in this matchup. Because of both decks are just these slow grinding decks, right? Does one player have to assume the aggro role here?
Not necessarily. It's more about just gaining a dominant board state. I think both players are really capable of doing that. Either with Stoneforge Mystic or True Name Nemesis, or even Jace the Mind Sculptor at times. But Andrew can also really create this dominating board presence with Mother of Runes and all his utility creatures. So I think it's more about just creating a dominant board presence as opposed to beating down, because it's kind of difficult to beat down in this matchup.
Yeah. So right there, Lee fetches for Tundra. Casts Stoneforge Mystic. Andrew certainly expects it. It's going to go ahead and get Umezawa's Jite, and Lee passes back.
So the good thing for Lee in this matchup is he has a lot of ways to kind of interact with Andrew's creatures. He's got Swords to Plowshare. He also has Jace, obviously. He's got one copy of Vindicate. He also has 2 copies of Liliana the Veil. So he has ways to kind of kill Andrew's creatures, where Andrew really doesn't have any ways to interact with Lee's creatures.
Yeah, and we see that actually in Lee's hand. It's one of that kind of combo that can shut down a Death and Taxes deck. He found Lee without his Jite, and he already had a True Name Nemesis in hand. That is one of the interactions that Death and Taxes has a lot of trouble fighting over.
Yeah, and Andrew played a Rashad Port in his turn. Rather than keep it up to kind of tap down Lee on his turn, he decided to just cast Stoneforge Mystic, and he's going to find a Batterskull.
So he's opting to do that instead of playing a control game. I know that this matchup changed with the printing of True Name Nemesis. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, there's some urgency on the Death and Taxes player's side of things.
Yeah. And unfortunately for Lee, he did not find a third mana, so not the ideal situation for him. He does have the Batterskull in play in his hand, which is why he did not search for it last turn. Now he's going to cast Brainstorm. He's going to try to find a third land here, which it looks like he does.
Yeah, he found a third land and a fourth, one of them being a fetch land, once again showcasing the power of Brainstorm. He will bin a second copy of Brainstorm, it looks like. And he has actually 2 True Name Nemesis. He bin 2 copies of Brainstorm.
Yeah, so at this point, I don't think he really cares about the cantrips anymore. He has 2 equipments. He has 2 True Name Nemesis and a Deathrite Shaman. So
yeah, so actually he's shuffling away both copies of Brainstorm. So to you, that says he's just perfectly happy with the cards he has in his hand?
Yeah, he doesn't think he needs anything else. He's going to be able to get a Batterskull into play. However, Andrew does have a Mother of Runes now, so he'll be able to give his creatures protection from black, which the Germ token is.
Right. The difficulty, once again, will be, can Andrew fight over those two True Name Nemesis that are hanging out in Lee's hand? Once equipment gets onto them, remember, Andrew cannot win the fight over True Name Nemesis. The fight has to be fought over the equipment that Lee tries to put on it.
Yeah, so here we're in a situation where Andrew's just going to try to keep Lee off of 3 mana, which is, the fact that Lee kind of shuffled away 2 of his Brainstorms, is actually, it could happen. And that Andrew can still develop his board because of Aether Vial, which shows you just how powerful Aether Vial is.
All right, well, the end step, Stoneforge activation will put Batterskull into play, as we see the Brian Braun-Duin token.
So let's see here. Is Andrew going to try to keep him off mana, or is he going to activate Stoneforge? Yep, it looks like he just cares more about activating that Stoneforge and getting the Batterskull into play.
Yeah, Andrew didn't have the 4th land, but he doesn't really need one thanks to Aether Vial.
Yeah.
Right, land number 4 from Lee.
So Lee here, we could just see a True Name Nemesis and a Deathrite Shaman come into play this turn.
Yeah, True Name, that's the card. This card.
And you have to name a player. You have to name an opponent.
And now Andrew has to be concerned with that interaction. Lee, with his 5th land next turn, can throw a Batterskull onto True Name Nemesis, and at that point, Andrew will have very few ways to deal with the board.
Yeah, one of the few ways that Andrew has to deal with equipment is Phyrexian Revoker.
Exactly.
Phyrexian Revoker, you can actually put into play, name an equipment, but once the equipment is actually on the creature, it no longer stops the equipment. So
at that point, he'd have to Flicker Wisp the equipment off the creature and then revoke it. Which that if he didn't have the Revoker in the first place, that's a pretty tall order.
Yep. So Aether Vial is going to get activated, and we're going to see another Stoneforge Mystic.
So he will get to put a equipment into play on end step. Now he can choose between multiple equipments. Where he plays Umezawa's Jite, Batterskull, and Sword of Fire and Ice in his deck.
Yeah, the question is here, he just, with only 2 mana, he really, even though he has Aether Vial going, he really doesn't have that much to work with. The problem is, you know, he has a Sword of Fire Ice, so you could get a Sword and Fire Ice here.
That's his only way to swing past True Name Nemesis. However, that doesn't swing past the Germ token at the moment.
Yeah, he could use the Mother Runes and be a little aggressive there. So if he activates the Mother Runes on one of his creatures that he equips, he could actually attack through the Germ token and the Deathrite Shaman. So let's see here what Andrew's going to do. He's going to get the Sword of Fire Ice. Is he going to activate Stoneforge and put the sword into play, or is he going to put the Batterskull into play? And yep, here comes Batterskull. So Batterskull's going to come into play. That'll give him a little life if he decides to block next turn. I mean, obviously he can choose to attack, but he's going to actually tap his Mother Runes to do it this turn. So don't think he wants to do that.
Yeah. So what is, if he doesn't have the Revoker in his hand, which it appears he doesn't, what is his game plan? Does he have a good game plan to deal with this?
He has to try to race it, but again, Lee has both the Batterskull and the Jite, so I don't really see how you can race it in this situation. Andrew just doesn't have enough of board presence. One thing you could do is if you had a bunch of flyers in play, like he has cards like Serra Avenger and Flicker Wisp, those cards can race in the air, but you can't really do anything if your opponent has the Jite on the True Name Nemesis. So yeah, it's going to be a tough spot for Andrew right here. Lee's board just developed too quickly for him. Andrew did draw a 3rd mana source, but again, he doesn't. He kept the Aether Vial at 2, so it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get a Flicker Wisp. So the option of Flicker Wisping the equipment off, it's not going to work.
Right. No pass back. Yeah, I know in the past this was that matchup that was actually pretty decent for Death and Taxes. True Name Nemesis really did change that though for the Death and Taxes player. Now I see Umezawa's Jite, that's put into play off Stoneforge Mystic, and because he has the mana, that will be equipped to True Name Nemesis. Now with no way to Flicker Wisp that equipment off, that's going to start going to work.
Yeah, so Andrew's going to take 3 from the True Name Nemesis, and more importantly, Umezawa's Jite will get 2 counters on it. So now we can see Mother Runes now can actually die to the Umezawa's Jite counters if Lee chooses, which is exactly what we're going to see happen.
Yep, first counter is used to take their Mother Runes. He's going to give protection to his Germ token, perhaps protection from white, but
so
hits will continue.
Looks like Lee might have tapped a little incorrectly there. If he leads with the Tundra and keeps his Black Source up, he could actually activate the Deathrite Shaman if he chooses. But either way, he's still in a pretty good state right here. He's got True Name Nemesis. He could actually equip Batterskull next turn if he chooses to, and really get beefy.
So Andrew with a nice trick he pulled out at the end on end step there. He put the Sword of Fire and Ice into play and Serra Avenger into play off Stoneforge Mystic and Aether Vial. That will give him a chance to equip the sword and attack with Serra Avenger, which will give him an extra card draw, and once again, more chances at finding a way to interact with the Jite and True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, because Phyrexian Revoker will still shut off the Umezawa Jite. If he activates Aether Vial and Lee does not respond, the Revoker will come into play, and it can name Umezawa Jite.
Yeah, and he does actually have a way to close out the game if he can get to that point. Well, no, I was going to say, I believed he had a Mangara. He's not actually running that build, so he doesn't have a way to permanently exile equipment. One thing that actually Andrew's playing in his deck list that I wanted to point out, he's running 4 Spirit of the Labyrinth in the main deck. So that was...
Yeah.
I know Adrian Sullivan, for example, is also playing Death and Taxes. He has it as a one-of in the sideboard. Andrew with a much stronger endorsement of the card.
Yeah, so obviously he's got. It looks like he has 2 in his hand right now too. So not going to be really doing that much in this particular game. But he does get a hit off with Saravanger, so he hits Lee for 5 and takes out a Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, so he's getting some good damage in. Once again, this is going to be difficult for him because an active Umezawa's Jete is very hard to race, even with Sword of Fire and Ice.
Yeah, not only that, but he's actually could easily just equip.
Throw everything on the Nemesis.
Yeah, might as well just equip the Nemesis with Jete with Battleskull.
You know, and in these fair Stoneforge Mystic style decks, True Name Nemesis really has changed how these matchups work. I know I've talked to a lot of players about ways to break this matchup or to somehow deal with this interaction. I've even seen players go as far as sideboarding in Circle of Protection Blue as a way to possibly deal with this interaction. A card from Alpha that's probably seen no play since its printing.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard Rune Halo. I've heard a lot of different cards that kind of try to deal with True Name Nemesis. The problem is that it still makes it an excellent blocker.
That doesn't stop it. It just stops you from losing right then.
Yeah. So Andrew falls to 9 here because of the True Name Nemesis hit. True Name Nemesis is now a 7/5. It also has 3 counters on the Umezawa Jete. So.
All right, Spirit of the Labyrinth now in play for Shroud. This is the new card from Theros. It's the one that certainly people thought would see the most legacy play, and Death and Taxes is where we think it would see play. Each player cannot draw more than 1 card per turn.
So Flicker Wisp is really the card Andrew wanted there.
Yeah, he ticked up his vial in anticipation of drawing one.
Yep.
Remember, he does not have 2 white in play, so the vial is the only way Flicker Wisp will get out on the battlefield.
Looks like he has a 4th land, but he's still 1 off from actually equipping the Battleskull onto the Saravanger.
Now, if he can make that equip, it's possible. I still don't think it's possible he could win the race. He's too far behind.
And I don't think he's going to get a chance to. He's not going to. He's going to die to Lee next turn. Lee's likely just going to pump his True Name Nemesis and just kill Andrew. So Andrew here in a tight spot. Not sure if there's really much he can do right here.
He gets a draw. The problem is even if he draws Flicker Wisp, the True Name is going to be active. It's going to be worth for 9 damage, no matter what he Flicker Wisps.
Yeah, so he's going to get 1 draw here.
But 1 isn't enough. Well, no, he actually doesn't get a draw because of Spirit of the Labyrinth. He can't draw another card this turn.
Oh, but he swords the Plowshare to Spirit of the Labyrinth in response.
Okay.
So he's going to gain a life, go to 10, and then he's going to deal with the Deathrite Shaman, and I draw a card.
And that card was a Plains. That's not going to be any help.
Yeah, so I think Andrew's still dead. He goes up to 12.
He swords his own creature, which means he's got... Well, True Name Nemesis is currently a 7.
Yeah, so
it can pump for 6. It can pump up to 13 if Lee just puts all the counters into it.
Yeah, and I can't imagine he's not going to just pump all in.
Right now, he's swinging Andrew no blocks, and he's counting, I believe, whether or not this is lethal. Yep. Swing, remove all the counters, and that'll do it. Game 1 goes to Lee Prost.
So Lee was able to get a really good start. He got the Stoneforge Mystic into True Name Nemesis into the equip. So perfect start there for Lee. It just kind of shows you how difficult Andrew's deck has a time with a card like True Name Nemesis plus equipment. But after board, Andrew does have some options available to him.
Yeah, so after board, especially in a deck like Death and Taxes, they want to have lots of answers to True Name Nemesis after board, unsurprisingly. So things he does have access to, he plays 3 copies of Zealous Persecution. That's something that can go ahead and deal with a True Name Nemesis as long as he can get that before Lee can stick an equipment to it.
Yeah, that's the key thing there. You really, it is an answer to True Name Nemesis, but it's kind of a conditional answer because obviously once the equipment's on, it turns off the Zealous Persecution.
In addition, he has 2 copies of Oblivion Ring, and once again, if you can fight over the equipment, it's actually possible to win that game. We saw there, if he was able to keep all the equipment off True Name Nemesis, that Sarah Avenger with Sword of Fire and Ice would have actually been enough to take the game for him.
Yeah, that's kind of why I see some lists play Manriki Gusari after board. I kind of like that because, again, you're right. True Name Nemesis on its own isn't the problem. It's True Name plus equipment.
And historically, Manriki Gusari has been an excellent answer for Umezawa's Jete, basically since the printing of the cards.
Yeah.
It still is at this point. Other cards that we see in a sideboard that could be used here, Cataclysm, something that is often boarded in some of the more fair matchups.
Not sure you can bring that one
I don't
in.
know. I do know that when we saw this was playing for the Invitational Top 8 in Somerset. We were seeing a lot of Death and Tax. We saw a Death and Tax player bring this in against Deathblade.
Well, Lee's deck is obviously very mana hungry.
Right.
So, given the right situation on the draw, particularly, I can see Andrew kind of bringing in that card. Particularly just because if you can get like a flyer and equipment into play before Lee can do anything, just wiping the board is probably a good spot for him. So yeah, I can see a couple of Cataclysm. Probably not in the draw though. Probably more in the play.
Maybe there's on the play. The last card he uses is he has a 1-of Enlightened Tutor in his sideboard. That can go ahead and get an Oblivion Ring for him if he needs. It's a decent tutor. I think it's also interesting that card has gained additional utility because it can find Spirit of the Labyrinth, because that card is an enchantment creature.
Interesting. On Lee's side of the board, he has a couple options available to him. He plays 3 Rest in Peace, 2 Aetherstone Canonists, and 2 Meddling Mages. I don't really see those cards coming in this particular matchup. Meddling Mage could be useful, but again, Aether Vial will probably be able to get anything that he names into play anyway. He's got 1 copy of Flusterstorm, 1 Notion Thief. Again, same thing. Vendilion Click. Those cards probably not really for this matchup. Cards that I do like, though, he's got 2 copies of Supreme Verdict. That card I actually like a lot in this matchup, especially when you're on the draw. There are times where Andrew kind of really has to just expose himself to Supreme Verdict. He can't afford to kind of hold stuff back. He kind of has to press his advantage.
He is, at the end of the day, just a creature deck, right?
Yeah. So Supreme Verdict I like here. He's also got 1 copy of Hiding Needle, which, again, I like because of how important Aether Vial is for Andrew's deck. If you can shut down Aether Vial or even Mother Runes, that can be really huge.
Aether Vial's big. Equipment's big, too, worth needling.
Yeah, and he also has a copy of the Tension Sphere, which, again, can deal with equipment, can also deal with creatures, and 1 copy of Zell's Persecution, which can kind of blow out Andrew at times because he has a lot of 1-toughness creatures in his deck. He's got Mother Runes, Phyrexian Revoker, Spirit in the Labyrinth, Flicker Wisp, Aven Mind Sensor, so a lot of cards that can die to
Most of
Zell's
his deck, actually, Thalia as well.
Yeah,
I'd say
Thalia.
almost all his creatures are 1-toughness.
Basically, the only creature that doesn't die is Stoneforge Mystic and Ceremony.
That is it.
Yep. So, pretty good card for Lee. Unfortunately, he only has 1, so, but still, a lot of good options for him. 2 Supreme Verdict, a Zealous Persecution, and a Hiding Needle, and a Detention Sphere. So 5 cards that are pretty good in this matchup.
Would you say this gets stronger for Shroud post-board? Certainly, it seems like pre-board, his inability to deal with True Name Nemesis is a really important part of the matchup.
It all comes down to whether or not he can deny Lee's mana. But if Lee can generate his mana, his spells are just much more powerful. He's got, and after board in particular, he boards out the cards like Forcible, which aren't really great in this matchup. So I think and Spell Pierce. So I think it gets a lot better for Lee because Lee has cards like Thoughtseize and Inquisition, which can be problematic. So it really comes down to whether or not Andrew can kind of tie up Lee's mana.
All right. So we are underway. Andrew with a turn 1 Scrub Land. No play on that. Lee's actually going to get the first play of the game down. He's fetching for Underground Sea. Now, he does play cards like Thoughtseize and Inquisition. Do those stay in here or no?
I like both cards just because, again, with Stoneforge Mystic being such a key card in this matchup, being able to get rid of it, either get rid of it or get rid of the equipment that they find up, that can be huge.
All right, well, Lee's turn on play was a Deathrite Shaman. That quickly traded with his Swords to Plowshares from Andrew's hand. Lee goes up to 21, and Andrew will Wasteland back, going, as you said, on the Mana Denial plan.
Yeah, so this is actually pretty big for Andrew. It looks like he has another Wasteland. Unfortunately, Andrew doesn't have any pressure on the board, and Lee does have a Brainstorm. So as long as he is able to kind of find some more lands, he's actually not in that bad shape right now.
Yeah. Now, one thing is we see a Brainstorm here finding Jace, Zealous Persecution, and others. We notice that Lee also has a Wasteland in his hand. When your opponent's a Reshut Import deck, do you still Wasteland your opponent from Lee's side, or just treat every land as a land draw?
Given that he hasn't seen Black Game 1 and now he sees a Scrub Land, I think I would be a little skeptical as to what that is. So I actually don't mind just playing a Wasteland and Wastelanding a Scrub Land right here.
He's going to go for his own mana development first. He has Marsh Flats. He's going to leave that uncracked as a defense against Wasteland, which Andrew does have.
Yeah, I think the main reason he also played these with the Marsh Flats is, one, he has a Stoneforge in his hand, so he can cast it next turn with a Wasteland. And plus, at the end of Andrew's turn, as long as Andrew doesn't play a Wasteland or a Reshut Import, he could actually sack it and get rid of the the card left on top of his library, which I think was a Jace.
Yeah,
which
so
is really good right now.
Wasteland is a play for Andrew. He will play Phyrexian Revoker.
So in response, Lee wisely sacks Marshblast in response to the Revoker because Andrew could name Marshblast.
Yeah, Revoker does not say non-land permanent. Revoker is just like Piping Needle, that it can hit any permanent, which means, but the mana abilities can still be played. So he's going to go ahead and search up that Tundra.
And Lee does have a Zealous Persecution in his hand. He also has a Swords to Plowshare.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and say, correct myself here. Revoker cannot name Marshblast. It is non-land. But it's the other way around. It can hit mana abilities.
Yes.
But the Revoker is on Jace. That won't matter as Lee Swords to Plowshare is the Revoker. Both players back to one land. We've seen a lot of wastelanding happening. 3 wastelands.
And he wastelanded Andrew's wasteland, so now he's able to, he's drawing the mana he needs, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Andrew was able to mana denial Lee, but Lee drew out of it, and Andrew actually had no pressure in play, so he wasn't able to press any of that advantage.
Well, Andrew missed the first land drop, is the thing. That last turn, Andrew didn't have a land to replace one that was wasted, so he's now behind on lands, and as a result, it's Lee who first resolves his Stoneforge instead of Andrew.
So Andrew's going to play Marshblast, so you can search up a Plains. He might play Stoneforge of his own, but Lee in pretty good shape here. He's still got that Zealous Persecution. We were talking about how good that is in this matchup. He's also got a second Stoneforge Mystic as well, along with that True Name Nemesis, and I believe a third land that even casted.
And to me, where I think Deathblade had the advantage in the early game, it's really incremental. But the fact that the Deathblade player had a Brainstorm in his deck, and Andrew didn't as a Death and Taxes player, I think really smoothed out this early game for Lee. He was able to get some card selection, and as a result, when they get in this attrition battle of who can draw more lands, Lee ended up ahead, and I feel like that's expected when he's playing the blue cards.
Yeah, well, if you're a Wasteland deck and you're not playing blue, you kind of feel bad because you're basically expending resources on your opponent, but your opponent has ways to kind of search their deck, manipulate their deck, and kind of draw out of it because you're losing a land too. It's a one-for-one exchange there. So if you're not a tempo-based deck and you're not able to press that advantage, you're not really doing much, especially if you can't smooth out your draws and make sure you can continue making land drops.
All right, well, Stoneforge Mystics now will stare down each other. Andrew plays one of his own. His will find Batter Skull. We are back to Lee's turn.
Wow, so pretty good draw there for Lee. He drew a Thoughtseize, so that Batter Skull is going to get taken likely.
Yep. Mainstay of Standard, mainstay of Legacy.
So this could be basically the old school way to win, where it's just Stoneforge Mystic, you Stoneforge Mystic, I'll Thoughtseize your Batter Skull, I'll put my Batter Skull to play, and I'll just win with that.
I'll win that way. So we see in addition to the Batter Skull, there's a Flicker Wisp, 2 Sarah Avengers, and a Phyrexian Revoker in Shroud's hand. Probably that Revoker is the most concerning card for Lee, as it shuts off. It can shut off part.
Well, Flicker Wisp is actually interesting too. We're going to bring up that for you. It's a card that a lot of people probably aren't familiar with because it wasn't played a lot in Standard, but it's played a lot in Legacy. And if he draws a third land, he could actually cast it, and it'll allow him to deal with the Batter Skull for a turn at least. I mean, eventually...
He gets rid of the Germ token.
Yeah, so Lee will get an attack off the Germ token, but if he draws a third mana, he can play the Flicker Wisp, blink the Germ token, and he'll basically require Lee to activate Batter Skull, return it to his hand, and then replay it.
Once again, the lack of mana is coming to haunt Shrouds. He did not draw a third land that turn. He drew a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Is forced to just pass the turn.
Yeah, so Lee is in firm control of this game right here. He's able to just drop a Batter Skull into play. I don't think Andrew has any equipment left in his hand.
So he's leaving up the mana for...
He might just be bluffing a second Batter Skull perhaps, or maybe he does have a sword, I'm not sure. Might just feel that Spirit of the Labyrinth really isn't that relevant right now.
And, I mean, that certainly is true when you're facing down a 4/4 Vigilance Lifelink. So Lee makes the Batter Skull on end step, and then it is accompanied by its friend. That will be True Name Nemesis. Andrew Shroud jokingly taps Stoneforge and pulls the Batter Skull out of his graveyard.
I thought I misread Stoneforge for a
second. I see if that one's
second.
going to fly. I don't think it is. Oh, well, unfortunately it's in the graveyard. Huh. Dang, that one didn't work well.
You don't get the number 15 in the player standings for no reason.
You can tell Andrew says he's just got no plays.
This is not... This is a tough spot for Andrew. It's just too much to deal with, too much to contend with. And part of the reason that,
So, yeah, I say, I'll put this in out of the graveyard. That'd be a pretty strong card if he could do that.
Yeah, and this is part of the reason I didn't rank Death and Taxes as a tier 1 deck, so to speak, because your Esper Blade matchup can be very, very rough.
Yeah.
You obviously have a good show and tell matchup. And I think your matchup against Rug Delver is actually reasonable too.
I think
It's just the Esper play matchup.
There are some decks in Legacy that I like to call power. I would say are powerful in the abstract. The decks that are just what they're doing is really unfair. It's really strong. Death and Taxes to me is not one of those decks. I think what it does is very well positioned against a lot of the other decks in the format. Caracas really preys upon the fact that lots of players play Show and Tell. It does have Stoneforge Mystic, one of the more powerful engines. But I think at the end of the day, right now, we're kind of seeing Andrew get bullied by the fact that Lee is just playing stronger cards than Andrew is.
Yeah, and I think Death and Taxes also has a very interesting strategy where, it kind of takes advantage of Aether Vial a lot. So the deck looks great when it goes turn 1 Aether Vial, and it also plays 4 Shot and 4 Wasteland. So it does have that mana denial strategy as well. So I think there are things about the deck that even though they're not playing cards that are as powerful as other decks that we've seen, it can still kind of compete simply because it has a strategy. And sometimes, even if your card quality isn't that powerful, having a strategy is really more important than anything else.
Alright, so swing there from batters. The Germ Token and the Trinity Nemesis will drop Andrew's health total down to 10. Andrew did name Batter Skull on that Revoker, so the Batter Skull will not be moving over to Trinity Nemesis, and that won't be moving anywhere as Flickerisk takes care of the Germ Token.
Thankfully, there is that Zealous Persecution, which can 2-for-1 Andrew right here. And if Lee draws another land, he'll be able to equip True Name Nemesis with Batter Skull, because the Revoker will no longer be in play.
And this is where Zealous Persecution is huge. Goes ahead and it will prompt Prost's team take care of both the hate cards from Shroud, and that will be the match. Lee Prost 2-0 defeats Andrew Shroud.
Yeah, and that was that was a rough spot for Andrew. I mean, again, True Name Nemesis, equipment, it's just too many cards they have to contend with.
So, all right, I'm going to have this is an example question. So, when I talk about abstractly powerful decks in Legacy, when I'm saying, I said my contention is the Death and Taxes. So, if we had a matchup between Death and Taxes and standard mono black Devotion, where do you give that one?
So we're going to cut to that pretty soon. We have our deck list here, and let's see if it's another interesting one, or is it...
Well, we have Lee Prost back on camera. Last round, he was able to defeat Andrew Shroud. Lee Prost is still playing Esper Deathblade. This time, though, he's going to play against a less fair deck. This is our first glimpse at Storm. This is Eric Rill playing Storm.
Yeah, he's playing Ad Nauseam Storm, a deck that we have not seen on camera yet today. And like you said, it's one of the more broken decks in the format. It doesn't play...
Certainly.
It doesn't play Force of Will. It's not like a Show and Tell deck where it tries to give up some speed for more resiliency. It is an all-in combo deck. It does play Duress and Cabal Therapy, but it plays Lotus Petal, it plays Lion's Eye Diamond. It really just tries to cast Ad Nauseam as quickly as possible and then just win with the Tendrils of Agony.
Most decks that start with 0 creatures and 15 lands are up to no good, and the Storm is certainly one of those.
And this matchup, a kind of a pretty good example of, the fair versus unfair decks. If that's kind of a theme when you go to a Legacy tournament, you really hear people talk about fair versus unfair. And, obviously, a deck like that has Stoneforge Mystic and Batterskull, it's kind of funny to call that deck fair, but it really is fair compared to a deck like Storm.
Well, yeah, I was going to say fair means you're paying for your spells and attacking. Now, Stoneforge Mystic kind of breaks that rule. You're not really paying for Batterskull, but for the most part, you're actually casting your spells. You're playing a land a turn, one mana spell on turn 1, 2 on turn 2. Storm is doing nothing of the sort.
Yeah, and this is the type of matchup where you have to figure the Ant player is favored game 1, and after board, the Deathblade player tries to bring in a lot of hateful cards to kind of regain that advantage. So cards like Rest in Peace, Ethersworn Canonist, Meddling Mage, Flusterstorm, Vendilion Click, these are all very problematic cards for the Ant player. So Ant, like many of these all-in combo decks, have really great game 1 matchups against a lot of the field, but after board, that's when it gets really difficult.
Yeah, so we are on to game 3 here.
So it looks like, we're in game 3, and both players, I think they're looking at their opening 7 and debating whether or not they want to keep. And it looks like Lee is good. Now Eric is going to examine his 7-card hand.
So it looks like Lee actually was able to steal game 1. Eric came back with game 2, but Esper will get to be on the play for the 3rd game. Something that can be pretty important in this matchup. One of the things that the Deathblade player wants to get down a threat before they have to start playing defense.
Well, Eric's sideboard is kind of interesting. He's got 4 copies of Dark Confidant, so it allows him to kind of generate a little card advantage if he's trying to power through a lot of hate cards. So Dark Confidant, definitely an interesting sideboard card. He also has one copy of Defense Grid, which is good against like counterspell heavy decks.
We'll need to see what he's playing against. Lee's deck is Lee's hand was a hand with a lot of options, but not many cards in it. It was a one-lander, a triple Brainstorm, Rest in Peace, Stoneforge Mystic, and Jace.
And he knows he's playing against Anne, so he doesn't have to worry about Wasteland. So
right. This is a pretty aggressive hand, though. He could certainly get Brainstorm locked. It seems like he needs a little bit of help to really make the deck work.
Well, Rest in Peace is really huge against a deck like this,
right?
Because it kind of relies on Past and Flames at times. So, and it also the Cabal Ritual turns off Cabal Ritual from every gaining threshold. So,
this hand is resting.
It's not bad.
Yeah, this hand is certainly putting a lot of value in Rest.
Yeah, if he gets the 2 mana, I think he's fine. And again, with triple Brainstorm, there's the potential that you'll get Brainstorm block, but I think the odds are probably in your favor a little bit. So,
the question is whether or not the Rest in Peace will get duressed, I suppose.
Yeah,
Thoughtseize.
He does have Thoughtseize. He has Duress and Cabal Therapy.
Might be that Eric's going for a turn 1 here. We'll see. All right, this is.
Well, the coast is clear.
The coast is clear. All right, so.
Is that a Dark Ritual?
That certainly seems like he's going for it. So turn 1. This is spell number 3. Dark Ritual adds 3 black to his mana. At some point, Lee can try to Brainstorm for a Force of Will.
Oh wow! So he does have. Yeah, he looks like he has double Cabal Ritual and Ad Nauseam. So that is 4 mana right
Cabal
now.
Ritual goes up to 4. Another Cabal Ritual moves up to 5 mana.
And looks like he's a Defense Grid as well.
He had Defense Grid. No time to play such cards, though. He's going straight for the win, and now Lee really just has his one answer. Can he?
Yeah.
Can he find a Force of Will?
Yeah, he's got to find a Tundra or Underground Sea and cast Brainstorm and hope to find a Force of Will in the top 3 cards of his library. So, this is exactly the position that you want to be in when you're Ant. You want to hope your opponent you can just brick on a Force of Will.
Sometimes you can force your opponent's draws to be very binary when you're playing a deck that's as fast as Ant. All that really matters about Lee's deck is, did you have Force of Will plus blue card? The rest of the things he's playing not very relevant.
And we were talking about it in the last match. Force of Will is basically just an insurance policy for this exact scenario.
No on the first one, no on the second one, no on the third one. That will not hit. And
no,
it did hit. No, he did hit.
So this is going to be backbreaking. Eric basically was all in on this play, which is a reasonable play. He could tax him, but knew what the situation was. But unfortunately for him, he expended so many resources just to cast that Ad Nauseam.
Full hand.
And he's got 2 cards left, and neither one of them really are probably going to be able to get him back into this one. Lee was able to find a second land and a Stoneforge Mystic, so Lee's in pretty good shape here. All because of that insurance policy.
Yeah, and I think what happened was that Eric saw the Rest in Peace, and that's what made him go for the turn 1 kill.
Oh, I think it was perfectly reasonable here. I mean, I think I don't know if the odds are in his favor, but it's pretty reasonable that he goes for it there. I mean, he basically just has to make sure that there aren't a Force of Will in the top 3 cards.
Well, he does have the option of casting a turn 1 Defense Grid, and then next turn going for it off the same land with his hand.
Oh, yeah.
Behind Defense Grid. And normally, I would think that would be safe, but after seeing Lee's hand, he opted for the turn 1. In the end, Lee hit the Force of Will, and that should be, the game. He basically brought the game down to one play.
Yeah, but and if he did make the play that you're suggesting, Lee could have still dug for a Force of Will. He would have found it, and then he still ends up just playing Rest in Peace this turn anyway.
Forces the Defense Grid.
Yeah, right? So he forces the Defense Grid. Eric will still have his hand, but then he has to contend with Rest in Peace.
Right, and I think that's why Eric went for it. He said, if he finds the Force of Will, he's probably dead to the Force of Will no matter what. At least this way, if he plays that instead of the Defense Grid, then he wins if the Force of Will is not found.
Exactly, yeah. So Lee has Stoneforge Mystic searching out for Batterskull, and now Eric's just going to cast the Taxi Probe. He does find a Massacre, so he can Massacre now and make sure that Batterskull doesn't come into play next turn.
Yeah, what's going to be difficult for him is that Lee will respond with Rest in Peace, and which will all but eliminate Eric's board.
And so it looks like did Eric pass back to... I think we're on Eric's turn still. Yeah, this is a tough spot for Eric. He's got the Massacre, he's got the Defense Grid, but really nothing else to go on here.
He lost all his resources so early. It's difficult because he has to kind of decide what his strategy is. He knows he's going to have to contend with this Rest in Peace. She's going to have to find a way to bounce the rest in peace and then combo, but he's starting with a 0-card hand.
And I think that's the frustrating part for when you're an Ant player or Storm player in general, is that you could have they need to have the Forcible. They just need to have it. And a lot of times people don't even play 4 Forcibles anymore. They kind of skimp on their numbers. They only play 3 because they don't really view the card as a great card. It's basically just an insurance policy. And if they have it, you lose. If they don't, you win. So, that's a perfect scenario right there where Eric, I think, was perfectly justified in going for it there. Unfortunately, Lee was able to find the Forcible.
So see there, Eric went for a duress, hoping to get a rest in peace, but the rest in peace was hidden on top by Brainstorm. Lee's going to redraw it, Wasteland Eric's only land, and then rest in peace is Graveyard, leaving Eric with nothing but a Lotus Petal.
And Deathrite Shaman decides not to attack there, I believe.
Yeah, it stays back. Possibly should have attacked, but at this point, you have your opponent down to 1 permanent.
Yeah. Your opponent down to 1 permanent. He's got 2 cards in his hand. Lee's got a Snapcaster Mage, which is likely just going to get Casper as a beater. He's got Eric basically on a 3-turn clock, or 5-turn clock, I think.
Yep. He has 1 damage from Deathrite, 2 more from the Snapcaster, and that really should be enough. When you see these decks playing against something as unfair as Ant, their win con ends up being pretty trivial.
Yeah.
It's can they, as long as they have any sort of clock, that's just a creature, it's usually good enough.
So Eric doing his best here. He's casting a lot of spells this turn, despite having only 1 permanent at the beginning of the turn.
Sacks Lotus Petal to Ponder. Didn't see a land against, he's going to shuffle. It's possible he'll be left with no permanents and no graveyard here.
I think he still has the Defense Grid in his hand, perhaps? I think that's the last card.
He has a Defense Grid in hand. That's it. Does he draw a land? We will find out. Yeah, he did hit it.
Yay!
It's going to not crack it. No need to expose himself to Wasteland.
Oh, brother. This is Liliana. Oh, come on.
This game is getting real close after that turn.
Doesn't even cast it. I like it. Wants to get that Snapcaster in play.
That's probably correct. Upping your clock, I think, is correct. So Liliana will be just as backbreaking the next turn. Yeah, so Eric draws another land. He's going to search out 2 lands from his deck. Remember, his deck does not actually play very many lands that you can tap for mana. And by not very many, I mean it has 8.
Yeah, so he should be able to... Yeah, it looks like he's going to get a basic island and a basic swamp, perhaps. Doesn't want to expose himself to a wasteland, but nope. He's thinking about it. Does he want to expose himself to wasteland, or does he want
he wants
flexibility?
To give... So the ad nauseum in his deck is also gone. So normally I would say he's trying to draw to, say, Dark Ritual into ad nauseum, go to town. But that's gone, so he actually can't do that. Which makes it hard.
So he's going for a Tropical Island and Underground Sea, and he's going to cast the Defense Grid, leaving with no cards in his hand. So in response, Lee likely is going to cast a Snapcaster Mage to get out of his hand.
Yep. Gets Ambush Viper down. It's just a 2-1.
There's the Force of Will. That's pretty much dead now, though. Force of Will did his job for this game.
Yep. It showed up when it needed to.
I think he's okay with discarding it to Liliana Deville. I would not be surprised if Eric just conceded to Liliana Deville.
Well, I mean, it's hard for Eric to win from this spot. Without the ad nauseum, it's really... I don't know how it's not evident how he sets up his combo just on 1 card a turn, with a way that can race a 4-turn clock.
And with Liliana now, there's literally no way for him to ever gain enough cards in his hand for it to matter. Oh, wow, and Lee didn't even uptick it. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, right? He doesn't want to... Eric has no cards in his hand.
Discard his Force of Will, and is going to wasteland one of Eric's lands.
Lee's just going for the flawless victory here.
Get that card out of his hand. So Eric, down to 2 permanents.
I like that Eric's not conceding. He's a braver man than me.
Yeah, I would concede.
I would have conceded so fast. I would have been in the bathroom by now, crying. I wouldn't have conceded that Force. I would have played it out a little bit more. But Eric Rill falls to Lee Prost, and a timely Force of Will by Lee there on turn 1. Eric, it was a gamble, but I think it was a justified gamble there for him.
Certainly the odds were in Eric's favor to make that play. I think you put him in a spot where that was the correct call to make.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens that, that there will be a certain percentage of the time where your opponent will find the forcible there, and when they do, you'll probably just lose those games.
Yeah, so unfortunately there for Eric, but I think he played really well, and despite that, he falls to 4-1, and Lee, now second time on camera, his second win, and now he's at 5-0.
Esper Deathblade, I think one of the main appeals of the deck is that Esper Deathblade has a chance to beat just about anything.
Yeah, it plays a lot of powerful cards. It's a fair deck, but you have Forcible and you have hand disruption. So I think the combination of that, your ability to beat the fair decks with True Name Nemesis and equipment, and your ability to kind of hedge game one with cards like Forcible and Thoughtseize, and then you bring in a lot of anti-combo cards after board. I think that's sort of his plan, and it's definitely a reasonable plan that we've seen this deck have a lot of success with over the past few months.
Yeah, absolutely. Would not be surprised to see more of that deck at the top tables. It tends to be a competitor every time we hold the Legacy Open.
Yeah, and people love Stoneforge Mystic. I mean,
Yeah,
people just love Death by Shaman, Stoneforge Mystic. You play a lot of the cards that people love in the Legacy, so not a surprise to see this deck be, one, very popular, and two, have success at top tables.
All right, we are going to go for one last match of the round.